Doing well. Just let me know if you guys can hear me in the chat. Yeah, sorry, just had some things to do this morning, so had to delay the stream by 15 minutes. So apologies for anyone who's been waiting for a little while longer, but hopefully we can make moves, things like that, very, very quickly. I'm also just going to set up the timer clock so we can just get that going for once. Okay, great. I think that should be working now. Right, so back to chat. Hope you guys are well. Good morning to everyone. Anonymous says, thoughts on Foden to Palmer using a free transfer. This would leave me without attacking City coverage. I don't think you necessarily need attacking City coverage to play the game, right? I've always said, if you think you've got a strong team of good players, then you can live off of that. Sometimes you'll have good and bad game weeks because the players and the teams you're suddenly backing might not perform and City might perform. But it doesn't really mean that coverage is a concept in the game that you really need to subscribe to. I personally don't. I think Foden to Palmer is a move that you don't really need to make this week unless you are priced out in the future. So say you have Foden now. Foden's minutes should be really good for this week. The question, I guess, on Palmer is ultimately maybe Foden actually still has a better fixture after this if a lot of the players that have suffered injuries from City are only coming back after the international break. So it makes a lot more sense to do Foden to Palmer on 12. But if you're priced out of Foden, or rather priced out of Palmer in the future, and a move this week can help with sort of bridging that gap, then I'd probably make that move. Otherwise, I think actually holding Foden for the next two isn't so bad. Son is not injured. Yeah, it seems like he's been training. The quote was actually, Ange actually mentioned that he's sort of trained. So sort of trained is not exactly the same as has trained. There's going to be another training today for Spurs, so maybe that's going to give us full comfort. We're not really going to know whether Son's in training anyways, so I think the best approach from my perspective is I am treating Son as fine. I'm hoping he starts. I don't think Rodgers is the greatest play this week anyways. Yes, Van der Ven is gone, but I don't think that completely crumbles the Tottenham defense. In this case, what I really would like to do is just have Son for Ipswich, and I'll call it a day maybe with Son after Ipswich at home if it still seems like he's struggling, and that's a very simple move for me to stack in 12. Let's get it cracking. You all have a terrible game week. Okay, the busiest. I do think Eze is, it is unfortunately the time to get rid of Eze because of the injury. The simplest free transfer from Eze is, to me, Garnacho. I think Garnacho is probably the player that I would actually pick now, thinking about the Man United changes, thinking about the fixtures ahead, and trying to avoid maybe Brennan Johnson's game week 12 fixture versus Man City. So I quite like going to Garnacho for most players. But Johnson is also still very good. Will Guardiola start? I think it's a case where if Guardiola's fit, he starts. If he's not fit, he's not going to play. So one of those unique situations where I can't really comment on it. Unfortunately, we don't have leaks today. I couldn't see any leaks, at least. And that might be an issue, right? So I will quickly just have a look at, early in the morning, do we have any leaks, that sort of thing. My general thoughts on something like Man City's lineup today is I do think that Ake does challenge a bit of Guardiola's minutes. Why does my captain say Haaland? Good question. Sorry, let's just fix that quickly. The captain is Mr. Mo. Right, sorry, back to chat questions. Yeah, so I was having a look at some of the predicted lineups today from some of the top teams. I've been also having a look at I've also been, to be honest, having a look at some of the predicted lineups for Man City, and there's a bit of a mix, right? There's quite a few people who think that Ake could start because of the potential Guardiola knock. But I do think that Guardiola is one of those cases where, once again, I think he starts as long as he's fit. I can't say whether he's fit or not. Unfortunately, I don't get this sort of news in the cartel. Sometimes the last time I got unique news was last season with Walker. Is Palmer a good captain option this week? I think he absolutely is. And it's a really good question, Niche, because I think the way I would see the captaincy this week is, to me at least, I think it's quite clear a Mo Salah top cap, then Haaland, then Palmer. But if you wanted to evaluate the fixture and then the quality of defenses this season, so every team has played around 10 games. So clearly you could still have played a really tough schedule. So far, what we've seen is that Bournemouth have actually been higher than, let's say, or just about similar to, or we're talking about expected goals conceded, right? So in terms of defense, what we've seen so far is that United have conceded like something like 15 XG, Bournemouth only 11.4, and then Brighton around 14.6. So quite similar to United, to be honest. Main difference is Brighton are away, United are at home, and Bournemouth are away. And Haaland is Haaland, right? So because of that, I think even if you use that as a little bit of context, maybe you adjust that for the fixture schedule. I still think that makes Bournemouth probably one of the tougher teams to score against. But it's Haaland. So that's why I still kind of find him second. And then if we equivalent, let's say, Brighton and Man United defense this season so far, then actually I would take the home and away slice, right? And that for me has a huge impact between Salah and Palmer. So I think Palmer is a very viable captain this week if you have Haaland and Palmer. If you have Salah and Palmer, I feel like I'd much more lean towards going Salah as captain. But once again, Palmer has emerged as clearly the third best option in the game, and I wouldn't begrudge you going there. Henry, thank you for being a member for 31 months. Hope you're doing well. Anton Lofgren says, sometimes it's a bit too much fun to be active in this game. Already insecure about my... I think it's... Look, to be honest, I think one thing I can say is that a move like going to Salah this week for, not without a hit was actually a very strong move, from, let's say, an odds point of view, even if a model-backed point of view. It can go really poorly. But what was another time where people going out of Haaland went really poorly? Haaland, sorry. When people wildcarded on Game Week 3, some of my friends, they went straight into Palmer, Salah, Saka, right? And they all suffered quite a bit on that hat trick, but have come out really, really strong. So sometimes the point of making a move in FPL is that you're going to keep Salah in your team for the foreseeable future. The hope is that over this run, Salah outperforms Haaland and you get quite a few captaincy Ws. And it might not happen this week, but it could happen in subsequent weeks. Sebastian says he's got a benching dilemma. Why have you included Mbumo in your benching dilemma? Nah, I'm kidding. But Smith Rowe, Mbumo, Wood, Havertz. I think the way I would see it is, if Wood is not ready to play, I can't see him coming off the bench. I feel like he either plays or he doesn't. So in this case, I think I'd probably just bench Smith Rowe reluctantly. I mean, even Kai Havertz, for example, maybe it could be Kai if you really wanted to play Smith Rowe so badly. Maybe it is Kai Havertz, actually. Maybe it's Kai Havertz. Lucas says, good morning, Fran. Good morning to you. Hi, Fran. Start Johnson or Rodgers? I'd probably start Johnson still as the home player. Bench Rodgers or Solanke? I would still bench Rodgers. I mean, that's what I'm doing. But I can understand you wanting to bet against Solanke. But at the same time, it's like, if you have a player in your team, he still has decent predicted odds, right, from different sources. So yes, of course, we watch football. Solanke's been awful. But there still seems to be at least enough authoritative sources that can judge Solanke can do well in the future. So I'm not too worried. Gabby or Guardiola is a question I'm asking myself. Anton says, would you start Lewis for Bournemouth or Mikalenko? I would start Lewis for sure. Anish, good morning to you. Sebastian, good morning. Dr. Yazan says, hope you're doing well. Start Roger Solanke. Yep, same question. I would definitely start Solanke in your case. Jay Wavy says, hey, Fran, Dibbling / Rogers to Salah and Haaland to Jackson for a -4. I don't really think it's worth a -4. And my concern is, my concern ultimately is if, say, you do the Jackson move this week, are you getting that much upside because he still has to play Arsenal next? And of course, Jackson has been scoring almost every game, so I can understand the appeal there. But if you want to do it for a -4, I do find it's a little bit trickier to adjudicate on those sorts of moves, because ultimately when you own someone like Haaland, and you don't have him, it's hard to bring him back. So for a -4, I'm not sure if I love it. Can you explain how bench points work? So first of all your bench points in terms of auto subs, you will only get a player auto subbing on if you had a player in your team who actually played 0 minutes in the starting 11. However, the auto sub order goes through, first of all, your team completing a legal formation. So if you had a back 2 and your first bench was Rodgers, actually, if you look at my team, for example, my first auto sub is not going to be Rodgers because that's an illegal substitution. So let's say Leif Davis was injured. I didn't know about it. He plays 0 minutes. My first auto sub should be Gabriel because I need to complete a legal formation with a 3-back. If you have a 3-back, then actually your auto sub just becomes your first bench. Madison or Smith Rowe start. I think I would actually probably go with Smith. I'd probably actually tempt myself with Smith Rowe, to be honest. Good morning, Fran. Loving your content. I'm now playing Davis over Solanke, Porro, and Rodgers. Doesn't make sense. I would still probably play Solanke, but if you want to play Davis, that's fine. You're both playing Porro and Rodgers. I mean, I'd play Solanke over most players, to be honest, if I had the choice. If I had to bench one player there, I'd probably still bench Porro if I was thinking about it. Why Haaland out? The way I see it, if I look at Salah's fixtures, is I'm going to captain him this week, next week, and Southampton. And even on next week, I mean, if I don't want to captain Salah, I'm hoping to captain Son anyways. So that was sort of the plan. When it comes to game week 13, I don't think Haaland is necessarily any better a captain than Salah on 13. The only issue is going to be, I think game week 14, I don't really have a great captain. So game week 14, I'm going to have to call upon my man Cole Palmer to captain for me. So that's that. Game week 13, if I keep Son, is also a decent captaincy there on paper. So there's a couple ways that I can move things around. I don't necessarily plan on captaining Salah there, but there's the option of maybe just going for Palmer himself with the home fixture, or Son once again. Or if I go to Son to Saka on game week 12, I've got Saka as well in game week 13. So that's another option too. Basically, the next time I think I would revisit Haaland back into my team is around game week 19 or 20. Because after this entire run of games from Mo, I think what I'll plan to do is probably keep him at least until this Leicester captaincy. And then if I look at the Man City fixture run, generally speaking, 18 plus is where it starts to get good. And maybe this is around the time where I switch from Mo after 18 into Haaland 19 plus. But it's not exactly a perfect run for Haaland, right? It's only a very short interim good run of games. And then he also runs into a pretty tough fixture run. So I don't really mind keeping Salah perpetually for the rest of the season, to be honest. When I look at the run here, I've got alternative captaincies on 17 and 14. And then actually, I'm probably going to keep Mo up until here. So it's actually, no Haaland for a very long time for me. And who knows when I wildcard later down the season, how the blanks and doubles unfold. But for now, I think I'm pretty happy with owning Mo for a long time. Let's see. Dr. Zan, good luck to you as well. Hope you're doing well. Which combo do you prefer? Nils says wildcard Cunha and Mikalenko or Larson and Konate. I probably would actually go Larson and Konate. Just because I really like Konate's minutes, and you get a piece of that Liverpool defense for a cheap price. In your formation, if Guardiola doesn't play, nor does Gabriel or Dunk, would you get points from Rodgers? No. That's a good point, Catch Up Kings. I would not get any points at all. But I mean, the reality is I think Guardiola could play. I think Gabriel is more than likely going to play, and I think Dunk is someone who might be fit based on what Fabian said. So, yeah. Why not both players? It's a good question. I think, look, let's look at my team. Probably the player that would be binned first is Haaland. Solanke. Then I need to recuperate 8.5 mil, which is very, very tough. And it means I probably have to cut down on my defenders, but that still isn't really quite enough. And it's just a little bit of a tough compromise right now. I quite actually like the... I took Calvert-Lewin out. What an idiot. you know, I'd have to take Solanke out. Then I'd probably have to take some defenders out. And I probably also have to drop off a Son. What I don't like about this is I actually really do like owning Son or Saka. And I also like having a slightly more well-rounded team as a result of it. So say I own Garnacho, who's like a good placeholder midfielder right now. My defense would still be very, very, very weak. And I don't really like that. Now, clearly I could probably drop Calvert-Lewin or Rodgers to someone who's like complete fodder down the line. And this would be the structure. But once again, I feel like this defense is quite compromised. And I don't love it. I personally would just like to have Son moving between Saka. And I think Salah and Palmer can cover me in terms of captaincies for the foreseeable future. Even though, as I said, there's going to be some weeks where Haaland is just clear. Start Aina or Gabriel. I'd probably start Aina. McNeil and Rodgers. It seems like McNeil's out. So, I mean, I'd probably just play Rodgers in this case. How to become a president on the channel. I think sometimes I'm not sure actually. I mean, you are a member already on the channel. I think the only way to change that is you can click on your membership on your own features, or maybe like go onto my channel page and then check on the membership panel. The alternative, I don't know, is usually that there is a button for most people who like click on a video, right? So say you're on the video, there's usually a button which is join. I know you've joined already, so I'm not sure how that changes as a member. I've never seen the panel from the point of view of a member, but usually at the bottom left, there's a button next to sort of my icon saying join. I wonder if it changes. You hope DCL to return today? I don't even believe it, but I mean, at this point, my plan with DCL is I'm going to keep DCL until João Pedro is coming back, so around game week 13. So yeah, DCL has 3 good fixtures in the interim. I don't really care about him anymore, but I'll probably play him for most of them as long as he continues to start. I'll bring João Pedro back around game week 13, Southampton at home, which I think is a perfect landing spot to move there. So that's a game week 13 move. My plans in the interim, though, is just to go Solanke to Isak and also Son to Saka. So as you can see, I've got a 0.4 leeway there, but in the future, I feel like my team would look like this, right? Gabriel, Guardiola, Lewis, and Dunk, I think, is a strong core. Maybe Davis needs to go in the future because if you look at Ipswich's fixtures, they're not great until 13, but who knows if my team can last until then. I might be able to play him a few games. But yeah, this is sort of the ideal team that I would like to have in a few weeks' time. And it's going to have Isak out of Solanke. It's going to have João Pedro, etc. Android YouTube app is broken. If you want to change tier, use the desktop browser, Chrome or Brave. Oh, thank you, Marvin. Appreciate that. And Marvin as well, thanks for joining as a member. I know you're a great supporter of the script, so thank you. Sebastian says, Mbumo, Smith Rowe, Wood, Havertz, which one should I bench? I think we answered that already. You're saying Havertz could be the bench. Tony, thank you for being a member for 4 months. You've got Gabriel, Guardiola, and Greaves. Make 1 free transfer and risk it. Yeah, because I mean, at that point, you probably need to make 1 free transfer. Are you talking about Greaves, though? I probably wouldn't I wouldn't use a free transfer on Greaves unless you had money in the bank to get you to a 4.5 or a 4.6. Because I feel like using a free transfer for someone who's worth that sort of 4.0, 4.1 isn't going to do much for your team. Unless you're going for someone like, if you can get to someone like FaZe or Mikolenko just about, I can understand maybe the appeal of the transfer in that situation. I've got a gut feeling that Gabriel plays, so if that helps, I hope that can tell you. Cunha must this week. Can next week do? I think Cunha can do next week as well. I don't think this is actually that good of a Cunha fixture. Next week is much, much better, right? Next week is Southampton at home. Crystal Palace, as we've always given credit to them, have always been a better defense. And actually, now that they're not playing like Nathaniel Klein every week, their defense looks a little bit better. So I can totally understand the appeal of not going for Cunha this week, especially if you're not going to make like the two-way move that I'm making, right? Like I'm going for Cunha this week because I've gone out of Haaland, and I would like to go for a forward in my position who can last in my team for the long term and doesn't really need to require like additional transfers, hopefully. That's the plan. OP talent, Eze to Saka -4 or place Emmanuel Welbeck. I would actually do the -4. The way I see it, right? Eze could be out for 2 to 3 weeks at one time. Locking down Saka is very important for the game because Saka is such a consistent, strong asset. So unless you have an easy way to get there, it's always going to take a little bit of effort to get to Saka. And I can understand the -4, as I said. I'm totally backing my team. No worries. I want my team to do well every week. It's just that they refuse to listen to me. Is this my final team? This is my final team. McNeil to start. I don't know, actually. McNeil, it seems like the news isn't super positive. The way that I've seen Everton predictions, a lot of people seem to think that McNeil's not going to play. Is this your final team? Yes, this is my final team. Play Ait-Nouri or Murillo? I'd probably play Ait-Nouri still. What do you think about Mateta in the long term? I personally think that Mateta should be a part of the squad and playing consistent minutes for Crystal Palace. But those really weird benchings, those 45-minute substitutions give me a little bit of pause. So I feel like Mateta is one of those players where until we finally see him start a couple games in a row, I don't have the same sort of confidence in terms of his minutes. Now, Eze being out is kind of beneficial because I guess it allows for Nketiah to play. There's not many challenges in terms of the minutes of certain players. So there's that. What are the leaks in the FPL Cartel group chat? I mean, I can have a look. There's no cartel leaks that I could see. Protagonist says 1 free transfer and 3.9 mil as he went Santese last week. I'd go to Saka because you can't guarantee Son's minutes, right? In my opinion, I feel like I own Son in a regrettable position. I don't really necessarily say, like, if I had the choice to go Saka to Son this week, I would definitely go and keep Saka, right? That kind of question. One more question, Fran. J-Wave says, with the defensive dunk, Gabriel, Guardiola, Robertson, Lewis, should I look to bring a defender because of Robertson benching fears? I think so. I think this is a good time to just sell Robertson. If Robertson can be downgraded to someone like Ait-Nouri, I'd probably just do that, personally. And then you can spend the money elsewhere. Foden instead of Saka, I think you can keep Foden this week, but then Saka should still be a future transfer for you from Foden. I just think that with the amount of injuries that they have, I just cannot see Foden not playing football this week. And unfortunately, there's no cartel leaks, which is a huge shame, but it is what it is. Like this week, right? If Savio is out and he has a knock, think about it. They have to play Nunez. They have to play Silva on the wings. They have to play, I don't know, Gundo and Foden, I guess, inside. And then Kovacic and Lewis almost like as part of, this sort of diamond or box midfield, whatever you want to call it. And that's it. Those are the only players who could actually play football today. The back line is a little bit different. You could play Ake or Guardiola. That's different. You could play Stones or Akanji on the right, and then you can play, I don't know, someone central center back like Diaz. But it's really hard to actually guess because we must remember, like, Akanji has a knock, Savio has a knock, and Guardiola potentially has a knock. So yeah, it is tough. Start Rodgers over Solanke. I personally wouldn't do it, but if you're so sick of Solanke as a player, go for it. Pleasant day. Devin says, would you change Havertz, Son, Palmer, Cunha? I actually probably would. But the other question was Haaland, McNeil for Salah, Cunha. I would probably go out of McNeil because McNeil's not playing. At least Havertz and Son are probably playing this week. Welbeck or Rogers? I'd probably go Rogers. I think it's such a bad fixture for Welbeck. Morning Fran, Raul in the week for João Pedro and Cunha in next week for DCL. The thing about João Pedro, right, is technically, do you need DCL to start this week if you weren't making a transfer? If so, I think João Pedro can actually be a hold potentially. And then you could just go Raul for DCL. I feel like that could be possible. Clearly, you might not be playing João Pedro next week, so I get, yeah, I get the point. People are serious. Take out Haaland. Which other YouTubers have taken out Haaland? If you guys can let me know, since you guys are probably on the live stream multiverse. How many other YouTubers have done it? Which two players from DCL, Solanke, McNeil should I start? Unfortunately, you probably have to do DCL Solanke because McNeil doesn't seem like he's ready to play. Take a hit to sell Porro for Trent. I don't think it's worth a hit, Yazan. Let's say you had Porro. Would you play Rogers or Welbeck? I would still play Rogers. I mean, I did it a couple weeks ago, right? I played Leif Davis against Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and none of them did anything. The reality is I think you should still treat assets independently for the most part. Unless it's like a free hit. And maybe like you could justify it a bit more. Hey mate, best McNeil replacement with an 8.5 million budget. The midfield position is tough, right? Unfortunately, I don't really like any of the players. Maybe Jared Bowen is actually quite good. Yo, Bruno, hear me out. Bruno is not a bad pick. I feel like. There's literally no content cartel group chat. I am definitely in group chats with a large amount of managers, like in different places, but it's not like we all agree on moves and people don't say it. You're the only FPL content creator who reads majority of chats. Congratulations. You're not allowed. You guys are not allowing the Bruno recommendation. I don't know where the sun starts, guys, if I'm being honest. Davis or Gabriel? First bench Gabriel or Collins? I'd first bench Collins, and I'd definitely play Davis. As far as taking a hit to swap Haaland, I don't think it's necessarily worth it, to be honest. Thoughts on Sam Johnstone as a keeper? I mean, I have no interest really in investing into the bottom three. As much as Hermansen can make saves as well, for example, in his position. Although maybe Leicester, I shouldn't be talking about Leicester as if they were a bottom three team because they're simply not. But yeah, I'd probably swerve. The Wolves, the Ipswich, Fran, just tell them you told me you'd auto cap Bruno every game week if there wasn't any backlash. No, I would not captain Bruno, but I'd probably feel a little bit better about owning Bruno if I didn't have to read thousands of comments about Bruno. Gabriel has traveled. Yeah, that's good news. I think Gabriel will definitely play. I just can't see Gabriel not playing, if I'm being honest. I think he definitely plays. Like, I think that's just a lock that Gabriel plays, basically. What is the logic behind going out of Haaland, who's definitely going to be in the race to the Golden Boot at the end of the season? Feels like a transfer waiting to happen in the future. I mean, what does that even mean? Most of the players who are quite highly ranked in the world probably don't own Haaland, right? And you've got enough quality, I think, between Salah, Palmer, Saka, Son, that you can cover Haaland captaincies. If you just look at every week, you compared Haaland over this run and asked yourself if you were going to captain him more than 5 times for the next 10 games, I actually would answer no. So I mean, I'll repeat again, right? So these are the Mo fixtures. I'm going to cap him next 3. I definitely would cap him next 3 over Haaland. These are the Haaland fixtures: Bournemouth away, Brighton away, Spurs at home. I would definitely captain Son over Brighton away as well, even if you wanted to say that, Spurs versus Villa isn't exactly great. Then I wouldn't captain Haaland versus Liverpool. I would probably captain Haaland versus Nottingham Forest. That's actually the big one that I think is weak in my team. But then in this case, I'm going for Palmer, Southampton. Then we go back to the Haaland captaincies. Crystal Palace away, fine. I probably actually wouldn't captain him there. United at home, definitely. And then 18 plus is the run of games where I would say is concerning from a Haaland point of view. But that's many, many game weeks ahead. And so I still look at it from a fixture point of view in terms of deciding when I would sell someone like Haaland in my team. Because as I said, the only week that worries me is 14. And arguably as well, was it 16, right? 16 with Man United. So when I look at my team here, I've got Son. I've got Palmer as well with a great fixture, Brentford at home. And we know how poor Brentford have been on defense. So there's enough, I think, between Salah and Palmer at the bare minimum to cover Haaland captaincies. Not to mention that I'll also have Saka and Son on random game weeks too that can do super well. So if I was thinking about some of those odd game weeks, like 16 we said was one of those tricky ones. 14 we said was one of those tricky ones, but those are nice fixtures still for Saka still. So I don't really mind. Hey Fran, Monk's returns. Would you do... Nice to see you, by the way. Would you do Dibbling and Haaland to Salah and roll for -4? If no, who to start between Gabriel, Semenyo, and Dibbling? I think I'd probably start Semenyo regardless, and then Gabriel after that. And then, yeah, ultimately, I really wouldn't take the -4 this week, because it does feel like a week where if you have 2 free transfers, it makes a little bit more sense. If you got 3 free transfers, it makes a bit more sense. But if you're taking a hit for it, when you can maybe do a lot better moves from 2 free transfers, it could do well, and I think that's fine. It's still City though, but this is still Liverpool. I mean, ultimately, like, I'm not someone who likes to look at past points, but we live in a world where Haaland has had an amazingly good start to the season at the end of the day, and he's still behind 2 of the other players here who have just shown to be close enough, right? So as long as I can get enough value to be close behind Haaland, I'm okay with not having Haaland, and that's simply the point. Plus, of course, the excess funds mean something. So it's not only the bet of no Haaland versus the rest of the field. It's also just the money that I get from Haaland back, and whether I think that maybe my team could actually edge out Haaland for a while. People do not realize that part of the bet is much in the case of Salah plus Cunha in comparison of Haaland. We expect Salah plus Cunha to outscore Haaland. Pretty much, right? I mean, like, Dibbling is what was close to a dead spot. Like, I could play him on some weeks, in theory, like I have. But it's like, once in a while, I would be playing Dibbling, like, I don't know, 10 weeks. Welbeck 4.5 or Trent to Ryan out Nuri to enable Eze to Saka -4. I would just go... Well, I don't really like doing it on a Trent bad week, so I would recommend going out of Welbeck for now. If you don't own Palmer or Saka yet, when is the best time to get them? I think this week is still a good time to get Saka. I think this week is still a good time to get Palmer. The reality, though, is when I look at Palmer's games, like, I can still understand and totally appreciate that maybe the best time is still 12 for Palmer. And if you want it to be, I guess, really like scrutinous with Arsenal, if you want to say Nottingham Forest have been super good, right? That they've completely, I think, defended very well versus Liverpool and Chelsea, other top teams, that sort of argument. I guess game week 13 for Saka might be the next best time, because this isn't exactly a good run of games for Saka, if I'm being honest, like Newcastle, Chelsea, but he has done really well. I mean, look at how he did versus Liverpool. Do we think Diaz starts? I think he does, probably. But don't hold me on to it, because to be honest, I have not been paying so much attention into the minutes. I know Gakpo had a really good game in the AFL Cup, but you can read it like he's playing so well, Gakpo, that actually the plan was for him to start in the weekend anyways, because of how early he was subbed. You could also make the argument that ultimately Diaz is still first choice, and he was benched for the EFL Cup game for that reason, right? Who was benched? Diaz, Darwin, Salah were all benched. So I think you can make that point, but Gakpo is actually playing really well right now. So I think there's a huge risk, and I'm not really like going to bet on it. I think there's a pretty high chance that Gakpo could start. I haven't seen any Liverpool leaks either. Afnan Khan says, and thank you for the super chat. He says he's got Raya, Fabianski, Gabriel, Rico, Pinnock, Mikolenko, Greaves, McNeil, and Mbumo, Palmer, Johnson. What to do? I mean, I don't know how many free transfers you have. Assuming that you've got 2 free transfers, what I would immediately do and instinctively do is probably just go Haaland out to a forward, maybe Raul, maybe Cunha, maybe if you can afford someone better, go for it. But then go out of McNeil as well, because we don't know if McNeil will play. If McNeil has a knock, I think it's a good time to probably just bin McNeil and kind of move on from that perspective. Your defense this week is probably just Gabriel, Rico, and Pinnock, and I think that's fine with the Mikolenko auto sub. Or rather, I would actually play Mikolenko over Pinnock, and then I'd have Pinnock as the auto sub. So I think that's totally fine. And of course, you probably still play Raya ultimately, and I think the team is fine. If you only have 1 free transfer, I feel like you could roll and maybe see what, I don't know, 1 free transfer, what you can do with the McNeil position, because 3.6 in the bank can probably get you towards, well, I could mention Bruno if you're interested, but that is an upgrade. Or you can just simply look at the likes of Garnacho or Johnson still, or even Bowen. So I think there's a lot of options, and it just depends on how much you want to spend as well on upgrading McNeil this week. And sorry, you've got Johnson already, so that's why he's not coming on for you. Best Eze replacement, I think just like looking down from Eze's price point, I would just say Garnacho. Looking up from Eze's price point, I think you could look at Bowen or Bruno. I mean, what are you guys expecting from Man United under Amorim? Are you guys expecting that they're just generally going to perform a lot better? Is McNeil playing? I don't know. I think there was still a bit of doubt yesterday, so I'm a little bit unsure. They're winning the league. Okay, that's a good joke. What's the latest on Son? I think the latest on Son was that he sort of trained yesterday, and that today is the fitness test for him, because he's either going to train and feel fine, or he's going to train and he's going to feel bad. And then he'll play on the weekend, I think, assuming that he trains fine today. I don't have any other update beyond that. Mo says Diaz played right wing in the EFL Cup. He wasn't benched. Did I miss that? Oh, of course he did, right? Because who was playing? That's true, actually. So I guess we're still like actually expecting for a Diaz benching, right? My bad. I totally missed that, actually. Thanks, Mo. Appreciate that. Total skill issue on my part, but I guess, yeah, Diaz is probably more than likely going to be benched. You already did Haaland to Cunha to finance Salah. I mean, yeah, that's what you can see in my team. Fran, should I sell Haaland to bring in Palmer, Cunha, and Rico Lewis? I don't think so, because I'd still captain Haaland over Palmer. So I don't think it's necessarily that worthwhile to sell Haaland to get Palmer this week. I'd probably sell Haaland to get Palmer on game week 12 instead. -4 for Trent, Gabriel, and Johnson. Nuri, Dallo, and Salah. So you're taking Trent out, you're taking Johnson out for Nuri, Dallo, and Salah. I mean, I can see the appeal to it, to be honest. I can see the appeal to it. I think that makes sense. Do we know anything about Guardiola or Gabriel? I think Gabriel's going to play. I actually think that 95% chance Gabriel's going to play. I think there's no issues with him. With Guardiola, there's a couple issues. He had that knock. We've seen Ake play versus Bournemouth many times before. And yeah, I think that's my only concern with Guardiola. This should be a good game for him to get rested if he has a knock. So, yeah. Am I taking a hit? No, it's just 2 free transfers. You already did Gabriel out for Nuri. I think taking Gabriel out for Nuri is fine. Because it's this, like, look at this week, right? I'm not really even keen on playing Gabriel anyways. So, I mean, read from that, I guess, what you want. Start Konsa or Gabriel. I'd probably start Gabriel. Guardiola or Gabriel. I'd still probably play Guardiola, even with the risks attached to Guardiola. TC Haaland. How you doing it, Brendan? Play Gabriel or Porro. I'd probably just play Porro in this week. It's still a home fixture. And I think both teams don't have much sort of chances of actually keeping their clean sheets. Because usually I think the swing between Arsenal and Spurs defense is clean sheet odds, right? But this week it's not necessarily that much better for Arsenal, given that they're away from home to Newcastle. So that for me would probably just edge it to the better attacker in that situation, which I would still say is Porro. As good as Gabriel is on set pieces, and as good as Arsenal are on set pieces as well. So I'd probably just swing it to the team that I think slightly edge it in terms of, I guess, total predicted goals. Like I'm sure Spurs have slightly better predicted goals, and there's enough of a gulf in clean sheets that makes it like less meaningful. Is Gabriel fit to play? Seems like it. I think he's trained the last 2 days, as far as I can see from photos. Guardiola, Gabriel, tough one. As I said, I've gone Guardiola personally, just because I think Guardiola has a better game if he plays. But yeah, away Newcastle is one of the hardest fixtures. I agree with that. I think that's a good sentiment. I mean, we actually looked at the analysis last season, right? For underlying stats for home and away, and Newcastle was by far the biggest and best team at home, and obviously conversely one of the worst away teams. Apparently someone is waiting outside the hotel of the Man City Hilton hotel that they're staying at, and he's waiting for Guardiola to come in. Okay, that's kind of funny. Doku posted on Insta he might be playing versus Bournemouth. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna pull my phone out because I refuse to believe that. I don't have Captain Palmer. I've got that's Vice Captain Palmer. Let me refresh the page because you're scaring me. Okay, see, I didn't get scared. Right, Mr. Jeremy Doku. Oh, you think I have to Captain Palmer? That's a little bit different. I still think I'm going to Captain Salah. Doku versus Man City. Interesting. I don't know though. Like a lot of people just post that, so I don't think that necessarily means anything. I've seen Walker post something like that, and he ended up not even starting. No coffee today. Yeah, it's a bit of matcha actually. It's a matcha latte, homemade. Is it worth going out of Foden or Palmer for Salah this week? I would go out of Foden for Salah. I wouldn't go Foden out of. I wouldn't go out of Palmer for Salah though. That's for sure. Would you start Gabriel or Welbeck? I'd probably start Welbeck still. Nunez has looked great left. Yeah, Nunez has been absolutely balling. You know what? Funny thing actually is, I'm going to show you guys my draft teams, right? So guess what move I made last week in my draft? I went from Mateus Nunez in my draft teams. I hope you guys can see this as well. Yeah, so this is my draft team, right? With a couple other people like Andy Martin's in this league. But yeah, my move on all of my draft teams was to go for Mateus Nunez. Unfortunately, like this is the only draft league where I'm like first, but I got really lucky with the sort of roles. Whereas this team that I have has De Bruyne, and he's been injured for forever. So I've been absolutely struggling to get points here. But I've got Nunez here as well. So I definitely thought immediately, as soon as I saw the injuries in place and I saw his performance in the Champions League, I went straight for Nunez in every single draft team I could. So that's completely irrelevant to FPL, but that's some draft league FPL for you. Is Wood fit or swap? I don't know whether Wood's fit, to be honest. I have to say, I don't get that much inside info. I know the manager mentioned that there was still a bit of a knock. I have to imagine that Wood will still play, though. Yeah, tough one, though. Draft is fun. You also have McNeil and Guardiola. Is it better to let auto subs take over? Yeah, in those situations where you've got better players, I feel like you can just play them. But Porro over Guardiola, I think, is justifiable as a decision. For McNeil, I'd probably just play Rodgers as well. 'Cause it's not like there's that much of a big fixture gap, especially if there's like doubts on minutes and things like that, you know. Is Mitoma good? I mean, we can reconsider Mitoma like in the future. Like for me, Mitoma is more of I mean, he's probably a game week 13 plus player to consider, because there's no way we're gonna play him any fixture until then, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's kind of my only concern with him is really from that perspective. I think maybe say you go through these next three fixtures, which are pretty poor, starting with Southampton at home. I mean, there's a decent run of games. The only thing I would say about him too is that, unfortunately, it's not like he's got like too many additional tools, right? It doesn't take like all the corners per se. So just looking at like, for example, his like miscellaneous actions this season, he's only taken like what 28 corners. That's not too much. He doesn't really take free kicks, right? So that there's not too much bonus coming from that. He's never too, I think, goal or like too close to goal. So his underlyings are a little bit lower. This season has been a pretty big improvement though compared to last when it comes to his XGI. But that's sort of my concern with him. His minutes have been really good, and I think that's a fair point to be made. There are some occasional rests that are a bit weird. Because I remember I think he was rested in game week 8, if I remember, coming back from 2 World Cup qualifier games, and then he had to play 31 minutes versus Newcastle United. Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, there's always going to be the chance, I guess, coming out of an international break that he plays more minutes, and because of the amount of depth that Brighton have, that you have issues around that. But yeah, I think for the most part, he's going to be a good pick. Let's see. You understand, but if Guardiola starts, I'd rather have him over Porro. I think it's unlikely Guardiola comes on as a sub if he doesn't start. It could be the case, but I mean, look at it, the EFL Cup match, right? Like, my concern is, let's say if Guardiola is like not so fit, they wanted to play Ake anyways. Why can't they just do exactly what they did in the EFL Cup, which is Guardiola coming on at 45 minutes, and maybe you still play Ake, maybe you take out Diaz as a central center back, and then Ake becomes central center back, and then Guardiola plays 45 minutes. That would be my concern. You've gone out of Haaland, but you're undecided as to whether to bring in Salah or Harry Winks. Okay. Who to bench? Excuse me. Who to bench? Robinson, Davis, or Gabriel? I'd probably actually bench Gabriel. I mean, to be honest, Brentford have been such a good attack, and Fulham are still pretty mediocre on defense. I think I'd play Leaf Davis for sure. I'm trying to think about Robinson now. I'd probably actually play Gabriel over Robinson in that case. One thing to mention about Robinson this season is he's just not been as attacking as a lot of people think, right? So for example, like quick check with Robinson, if we just look at his underlying stats, he's been averaging some pretty poor underlying stats ultimately, right? He's not even, like, most games he actually averages, you know, below 0.1 XGI. So for the most part, he's been pretty dull, pretty flat. Whereas like someone like Leif Davis has actually been racking in some numbers, right? Look at Leif Davis every week. Every week he's in close to double digits, sometimes even like exceeding that to an extent. So like 0.32 in this game, 0.23, 0.34. That is like multiple levels, I guess, of what Robinson produces when it comes to chances. So I think personally, I would just bench Robinson in this case and just back the Arsenal defense there. But I think Leif Davis is a great game on paper. You're looking for a good goalkeeper. I mean, I still think Sells is one of the better goalkeepers right now. Going Fabianski at that price point, I think, is ludicrously good, if you can believe it, I guess. Henderson, his drop to 4.4, I think has really helped as well when it comes to like trying to min-max the game, trying to get as much value from goalkeepers as possible. So there's that too. But then ultimately, you know, below that 5.0 tier, I think Sanchez is probably still the better one. Looking ahead to Chelsea's games, given that we're pretty much closing to like the end of the poor run, I guess, for Chelsea. If we were to assume that Fabianski is like a good starting goalkeeper, like you could even see that's in theory, like someone like Fabianski can be played the next 2 weeks, right? And then suddenly you just have Sanchez perpetually, which I think works out quite well. So there's that as an option. And then obviously the classic answer, which is, you know, if you want to spend the full amount of money, you've got the funds, just go for Raya. Start Gabriel or Keane. I think I'd still start Gabriel. Start Rodgers or Smith Rowe. I'd actually start Smith Rowe probably. You're starting Sonaldo. I think Sonaldo should play, so I would actually play Smith Rowe. Would you do Haaland and Semenyo to Salah and another forward for a -4? Swap Solanke for Cunha already. Got DCL. Yeah, I think in that case, I'd probably just bring in Raul. If you actually can spend a lot of money, I think Isak is also a really good long-term hold, or even Jackson, right? That sort of like level of cash. Similar team to me. Good luck to you as well. Who to bench, Dallo, Davis, or Gabriel? I'd probably still bench Dallo in this case. I mean, it's Chelsea, right? Doku playing. You guys think Doku is playing based on the Instagram? Are you pleasantly certain about that? I'm not concerned. I'm not 100% sure that Guardiola starts. I mean, I can quickly try to look for leaks. I just don't think we have any today, unfortunately, which is sad. Yeah, can't really see any news. Palmer, Haaland as a captain. I think I'd still go Haaland as a captain if I had to choose between Haaland and Palmer. Very bold of you to take Haaland out. I really don't mind the decision. For me, it's like any other decision every other week. Hi, Fran. Would you bench one of Guardiola or Lewis for Mikalenko? I probably wouldn't. I would just play both. Wood with a squad. Did we get the news? Let me quickly have a look into that. Chris Wood has trained all week. He starts today. No, that's not true. Where are you seeing that Chris Wood is with the squad? From, I don't know, even a half decent source. Sam FPL. Which Sam are you talking about though? Like sports science or Sam Martin? No, that can't be it. Wood is present with the squad. Okay. Oh, nice. Where's that photo from them? I guess presumably just a photo today. So that seems good. Good news for Chris. You're thinking Solanke to Darwizi. I guess the issue with Darwizi is, are you also prepared for a future transfer for Darwin out on Game Week 13? And if your team allows for that, then that's fine. I mean, it's probably reliable because I don't think he's intentionally trying to put out fake information. So I think maybe Chris Wood is fine. So that probably helps answer sort of dilemmas for other people. Start Johnson or Rodgers. I'd start Johnson. Bruno out for Mo Salah. I think Bruno out for Mo is totally fine as a move. I would do it. Hey, Fran, worth it to take a -4 for the Haaland move? I don't think it's necessarily worth it personally. In my position, if I feel like if I had one free transfer, I probably would have rolled. Hi, Fran. You've got João Pedro and Eze. Would you start Pinnock this week or transfer Haaland, Eze out for Cunha and Salah? I would actually do it. Haaland, Eze out for Cunha and Saka / Palmer for free. But actually, do you have Salah in the team? I guess is the question, Jordan. If you've got Salah, then I think that's fine. If you don't have Salah, then I think it's less so fine. Start Mikolenko or Gabby. Even Gabby fit, he'll get a clean sheet. I mean, I don't think there's any guarantees of clean sheets. I think Gabriel will start, so I would start Gabriel. News on McNeil. I don't think we didn't have any news on McNeil, so I think a lot of Everton predictors said that he could probably be benched. What are the thoughts on Guardiola just joined the live stream? I think that he's more than likely going to be in a situation where either he plays or doesn't play. I know that that's not helpful, but I really don't have any updates from Pep, and my assumption is that Ake can definitely just start in place of him, right? So using that as context, I think they've got basically the bench cover for Guardiola, but it's also, yeah, I guess it's probably less feasible that Guardiola comes off the bench if he's not ready, right? If he's ready, he should really be playing. Will you cry if you get a red arrow this week? No, probably not. I should be crying every week at this point. Start McNeil, Rogers, or Gabriel. I'd probably start Rogers. Start Robinson or FaZe. I'd probably start FaZe. Start Porro or Mikolenko. I'd still probably go with Porro, to be honest. What do you think about Jimenez minutes after the international break? That is something that has concerned me. I think it could be the case that Muniz could just play, right? So I did think about that as part of why I wanted to go for Cunha, and it seems like Cunha has not been called up. Is Gabriel starting? I think he really should be starting. Which premium, presumably from Kittel, says Saka, Palmer, Salah, are you dropping Game Week 18 to get Haaland back in? And you keep hearing everyone saying, I don't think Game Week 18 is necessary, but I think at Game Week 18, a lot of people mention it because Game Week 18 is a really good Haaland week, right? But the reality is in Game Week 18, Salah actually has a better fixture anyways. He's got Leicester at home. So I think around then, just looking at the fixtures, I probably would keep Palmer. I mean, look at how good that run is, right? So Palmer is basically going to be kept for a long time. And then actually, we just look at, let's say, Gabriel's fixtures. It might actually be the case that we sell Saka instead, right? Because after Game Week 18, once again, this is a really good Saka week, so I'm not selling him here. But Game Week 19, you could, I guess, argue justifying maybe making 2 moves away from Saka into Haaland over this fixture run, and I think that could make sense. So that's something that's plausible for me. I probably might also consider moving out of Salah, but then it's still 23 Ipswich. I might actually be happy not owning Haaland at all for the rest of the season up until a later date. I have no plans necessarily to force him back in. But there's a couple of thoughts. I definitely think 18 is not necessarily I have to get Haaland back in the team, because I feel like Salah fulfills the purpose on 18, right? And as we can see, Saka is as well. Why am I not starting Gabriel? I just think that Guardiola will play, and that's it. And I think I would just rather play Leif Davis. And I'd rather just back the City clean sheet versus Bournemouth, and less keen on playing against Newcastle away. Sorry, just quickly having a look at potential leaks. And there are none, which is another sad day for the cartel. Where are the leaks? I can't see anything on Twitter that's like particularly helpful when it comes to, you know, like availability on certain players, any other players that we have doubts on, like McNeil, like Guardiola, etc. Not great. Not great. Fine. All right, moving on to chat. Did I miss the super chat? Sorry. No, oh, so I did actually. Jordan, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. You've got João Pedro and Eze. Oh, sorry, I did actually answer that question. My bad. I think we basically concluded that if you've got Salah, you can make those moves, but if you don't, I'd probably not make those moves just because it's kind of moving away from a better captaincy on paper. But yeah, let's see. Back to chat questions. What are your future plans for DCL? Yeah, DCL is trash. DCL for me, look, I mean, let's have a look at all the players in my team that I think are issues, right? DCL for me is a future transfer to João Pedro. Son is a future transfer for me to Saka. And Solanke is a future transfer for me to Isak. So the way I see my team in a few weeks' time is I go Isak, I go Pedro, and I go Saka. When would I make these moves? I'm going to give the Tottenham players Ipswich at home. So 2 free transfers on game week 12 for Saka and Isak. Then 1 free transfer in why is my brain lagging? And then 1 free transfer from DCL to João Pedro later down the line. Can I afford it, I guess, is the question. So, but why can't I afford it? I swear I could. Oh, right, the Solanke price drop actually hurts me quite a bit. So I think I'd probably have to do this. And then maybe on the week where I think is game week 12 actually is a Rodgers good game, right? Yeah, it's a good Rodgers game. So actually, in theory, I don't have to make the Solanke move on game week 12. It's sad, but I probably would either I actually keep, let's say, either I keep Son for this week, right? And then I do this. And then I ignore Saka for this week, I think, which is actually very plausible. I roll my free transfer on game week 11, so my other free transfer, or sorry, game week 12. I definitely roll on 11. I roll one of them on 12. I roll, and then I make 2 free transfers on 13. So I go João Pedro out from Calvert-Lewin here on 13, and then I go probably out of Son. I mean, arguably I could keep Son for anyways Fulham at home, but then after that I could still just sell Son. So I think I could just see it as a future move towards Saka later down the line. So that's sort of what I was planning in the future. But it probably just means that I need to prioritize going Solanke out for Isak here, where Isak has a really good home fixture versus West Ham, which is my plan anyways on game week 12. So that's sort of the rough plan that I have in my mind, to go into Isak through Solanke, or I do Son to Saka. So one of those moves will be made, and then the DCL move will obviously create a little bit of complication, but João Pedro is that sort of enabler later down the line where I can go out of Calvert-Lewin, and hopefully I'm not going to get 4 price drops across the field, right? So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. The Saka price rise was incredibly annoying in terms of the double free transfer plans that I had in the future, but I mean, I guess there's nothing we can really do. Unless, let's say, Son and Solanke go nuclear the next 2 weeks, and maybe they get some price rises, but hard to believe that that's going to happen. So I probably just have to roll one of my free transfers on 11. What are my plans with Leif Davis after this week? I mean, nothing really. He's not going to play for me on 11 or 12. He might play for me between 13 and 15 or 16. But for the most part, he's actually just going to be sitting on the bench for a long time, and I'll still be calling upon most of my Man City defenders. The only tricky part with Man City defense is obviously 12 and 13. So that's not really ideal. But then I'd also hope that Dunk could at least cover the 13 game. I'd probably still play the Man City defenders. I still would have Gabriel for like 12, 13, those kind of that sort of era. And then Leif Davis can also play on 13th conceivably. But it's not exactly the best defense that I have on paper. There's going to be some bad weeks in 12 and 13, I would say, and that's okay. Hi, Fran. Any news on Luis Diaz or Gakpo? I feel like Gakpo is going to start, so I think that's sort of where I'm at. Are we really putting Rodgers on the bench again? Last time we did that, he scored. Yeah, but I mean, I don't think FPL is the type of game where because you did something, it's not going to work out. I've benched Rodgers before, haven't I? I mean, I've also played Rodgers a couple of times, and he hasn't scored. So is the point that I should just play Rodgers, apparently, because he's going to get 1 point? No, right? So, yeah. I mean, I've played Rodgers, and he scored. I've also benched Rodgers in the past. I suppose, where he's blanked. Well, I mean, I've actually played him plenty of weeks and he's blanked a few. So, and I've benched him once. Oh, well, I guess is the answer. But, you know, that for me is like decision making doesn't come from, oh, what happened if I did the same move on a completely different circumstance. So I think, yeah, I don't really mind. It's fine with me. Back to questions. Raul or Cunha. I think it always comes down to the Raul or Cunha question. It always comes down to what can you do with a surplus cash. Sorry. So if you can do a lot with Raul, then I think that's fine. If you can actually probably see that you're not going to be making too many additional moves as a result of it, then I think that's fine as well. So it comes down to Cunha is also a little bit more of a permanent player, I would say, where you can play him, generally speaking, without rotation outside of maybe the Fulham fixture. And he feels like a really, really good play for the next 8. Whereas there's definitely a period after the next 3 games where Raul could be less so of a permanent play, right? Like, he still has to play Arsenal, Brighton, Liverpool, Spurs. Like, those are going to be tougher games for him. That's a block of really poor fixtures. And who knows, coming out of the international break, I think the big banker for Raul is whether he, involved in Mexico international duty, whether he's going to potentially miss out on Game Week 12. I think it's unlikely still, because I think he's playing so well. And it's probably... Did I miss one of the super chats? Apologies about that. I'll definitely have a look at that now. Afnan, keep Johnson or McNeil long term. I think I'd keep Johnson first long term. Cunha or Watkins in. I don't see this as a Watkins in game week, so I'd probably just go Cunha personally. I hope that kind of answers your question. With McNeil, I think the only value to keeping McNeil long term is, let's say you just don't want to spend that sort of money on the midfield, right? Say you would rather just have McNeil. He's cheaper. You don't have to deal with, let's say, Johnson at 6.7. And that additional 1.x million that you're going to have in place of McNeil and Johnson is going to do a lot better for a different sort of transfer plan you have. I don't necessarily know what your plans are in the future. So that could be the reason why you pick McNeil over Johnson. I don't think that McNeil is like a permanent starter, basically, every single week. So you kind of just need to keep that in mind. Whereas Johnson, for the most part, is. As far as Cunha Watkins, though, just answering that question, I just think this isn't a great run of games for Aston Villa. So, like, do I really actually like this Rodgers game? No. That's why he's on my bench. He's on my bench next week. He's going to be on my bench versus Chelsea. And then finally, I guess on Game Week 14 plus, there's a truly good run of games, but then it's also, still sort of roadblocked by City and Newcastle. Now, a player like Rodgers doesn't really have to deal with those issues because, look, you can rotate him at that sort of price point, which also goes back to the McNeil point. With Watkins, though, you're just going to have to play them through the bad fixtures. And of course, good players are able to do well in tougher fixtures, but that's not necessarily the argument. It's just about maximizing fixture runs. Like, I'd probably actually rather have Isak after the next 2 matches because his run of games is a lot sweeter. So, like, at least, fine, I have some tough games in there, but even Brentford, I would argue, is not really a tough game now from an attacking point of view. So, effectively, I would say Isak's run of games has 2 bad fixtures, but then, like, a supreme run up until game week 17, 18. So, yeah, I think Isak's, like, maybe even clear from the dominant sort of top forward options in the game. Rodney, you had a super chat for Eze to Diaz. I think Diaz is most likely going to be benched. So I feel like the best opportunity is to go Eze to Garnacho. And if you really want to push up in price, you still have Bowen or Bruno if you really want to spend additional money. But I would probably just go Eze to Garnacho. Question from E7. Salah, Haaland swap. Would you keep Semenyo or Rodgers? This is a tough question because I do think that Semenyo has really, really clean fixtures. So the way that I talked about how Rodgers has a bit of a yo-yo like fixture cycle, right? So if I go to Semenyo, one thing that I will say about him is that he's got a clean run of games, nothing too bad at all, right? Like, look at this game run after 10. You could literally play him every single week, and I don't think a single fixture here is actually bad on paper, up until it starts to dry up like on 18 plus. So the way I see it is, if you see Semenyo as a permanent starter in your team, I'd probably just keep Semenyo and risk the suspension. Whereas with Rodgers, he's probably a little bit more, I have to rotate him on certain game weeks in the future, but he still has some good ones in the distance, like Brentford, like Southampton, etc. So I'd probably back Semenyo, but it's up to you. Amaraldo, thank you for the super chat. 2 free transfers: Guardiola, Van de Ven, Gabriel, Aitnouri, Greaves, McNeil, Mbumo, Son, Semenyo. What do you recommend? Couple hits or free hit? 2 2 free transfers. I mean, you could just do, why can't you just do Haaland out and then Jota out and then bring Salah in and then bring another forward? And probably because you're going out of Jota, you're actually going to get a lot more money back, right? You don't have to go Raul or Cunha. You can actually spend a little bit more money. If you want to spend a little bit more money, you've got players like Isak or Jackson, I think, that are quite interesting for you as a Haaland replacement. In the back line, you play Guardiola, you play Gabriel, you play Ait-Nouri, and Van de Ven's out. Greaves is out as well, which is not ideal. But I don't really think that you need to force a transfer. Maybe if over the next 30 minutes, after you do the Haaland and Salah out moves, you still feel like that Guardiola won't play, and we get a leak on Guardiola or Gabriel that they won't play, then fine. Maybe make a hit for a defender. And maybe if you save enough money in the bank, what you can do, let's say if we know Guardiola's out or Gabriel's out, having having 1 million in the bank still gives you the ability to go Trent from one of those players if we get a 100% leak that they're out. For the most part, though, I would just address like the issues in your team, like Jota being out up until after the international break, and I'd probably just get out of Jota. Mateus says João Pedro since game week 12. I think for me it's more about game week 13. What I would like to see from João Pedro is this, right? He's really unfit right now. He needs his match fitness to be built back up. So what I would do with João Pedro is just watch him game weeks 10 and 11. And game week 12, he would have a full international break to train at home and to maximize his fitness. Probably he actually maybe plays a decent amount of minutes in game week 12, but you can't guarantee that with how safe Brighton have been managing their players. So I would just look at João Pedro for a game week 13 plus transfer. Because if I look at Dunk's fixtures here, Bournemouth away, I still think is a pretty poor game. So the way I see it, João Pedro is like an amazing transfer 13 plus. As far as Salah's question, game week 10, sells Trent, Gabriel, Aina, Johnson, and Mbumo, Salah, Rodgers, Cunha, Haaland, I think Salah is the captain. I think that's correct. As far as the team, I mean, it looks great. So you're going to be playing Trent, Gabriel, Aina. I think that's fine. Johnson, and Mbumo, Salah, Rodgers. That's a great team. Great team. Generally, no complaints. I mean, it's a good Rutter bench. It's a good Colwell bench. And Van de Ven obviously is out. But yeah, lovely team and good luck to you. Congrats. Protagonist says, start Rodgers or Guehi, captain Haaland, Saka, or Palmer. I'd start Rodgers still. Captain Haaland, Saka, Palmer. I'd probably captain Haaland. But if you really want to go for Palmer as differential, I think that's an option. Majed says, hi Fran, should I go Madison to Son if we get a leaky starts or just go Saka? I would just go Saka for the long term, right? We don't know. I mean, Son is still going to come back. His minutes could be reduced. He might even come off the bench. I am still betting that hopefully he starts, but I'm in the position of someone who already owns Son. If you had the ability to make the free transfer, I would just go for the player who looks much more fit right now, which is Saka. Other questions in the chat that I might have missed. Sorry. Missed a question a couple times for Protagonist, but I hope I answered it. Thank you for the first super chat, John James. 1 free transfer, -4 for Haaland / Dibbling to Mo / Larson. The only thing I don't love about the move, but I guess Larson's minutes are going to be much more consistent than Dibbling's, is for a -4, I feel like it's a little bit defensive. Like, I think if you were to roll this week, maybe your team would actually do perfectly fine without having to make the -4 away from Haaland. And maybe next week instead, you have the chance and the optionality to go there without a hit. So I would actually say if you've only got 1 free transfer, it could actually be roll territory for you, because the -4 is a real sort of part of that. Are we going to buy Gyökeres? I mean, if he's in the league, I think I'll probably be there. Start Aina or Semenyo, like in the 4 CS odds. I'd probably start Aina if you want to back that. I guess another part of the argument too is, like, let's say you have Semenyo, right? You know Semenyo is going against City defense. Maybe you have City defense. So there's obviously a little bit of like that sort of mirror matchup element. And if you want to sort of, I don't know, maximize your outcomes, then I guess betting against that would go well. I'd start Wisa. Try not to spam the chat, please. Vladimir, hello, my friend. What to do with Luis Diaz? I think the best replacement is probably, if you have additional money in the bank, I think you can actually go Bruno. But if you want to save money, I think Bowen is right there, to be honest, still as a very, very solid, consistent pick now. And if you want to save additional money, just go Garnacho. I think you can go down there to Garnacho. I just don't think there are too many options in the midfield right now. You went out of Gabriel in my defense this week just for some differentials. When would you suggest going back into him? I think around 12 or 13 is good fixture territory for Arsenal. So it's actually pretty close, but then, you know, you can wait for after the international break. Excuse me, sorry. Would you start Gabriel if we get news of him in the starting 11? I would not start him in the starting 11. I think Gabriel is going to start. Those are my thoughts. Ooh, we saw Son in training today. Oh, we saw Sonny in training today. Let's go. That's it. That's a little bit of good dopamine for me. Do you sell Burn? I probably would sell Burn, yeah. Notorious Wrestle says, I did a -8, sold Haaland, Son, got Salah, Palmer, Cunha roll in. But you've already taken the hit. I think the most important thing after you take a hit is to look at what the team looks like on paper and whether you actually like it. I think when you bring in players like Salah, Palmer, Cunha, Raul, I think that's totally fine, and I can understand that. So it's a big hit. It's probably not going to return perfectly this week, but I like it. He literally limped in the video. That's not a limp. He's literally doing a hop step. Tell me, there's no player in the world who runs like that on a limp. That's a hop step. You're smoking your dose of dopamine. I love it. Sun owners, we're back. You need to get the cigars are out. Start Winks or Rogers. I'd start Rogers. Dibbling or Semenyo for first bench. I'd probably put Dibbling first bench, to be honest. Solanke, poor shooting stats per 90. Yeah, I mean, he's got poor shooting stats, but I mean, are you doing this as a sample for the whole season, or are you doing this as a sample for like the last few game weeks? I think he's barely had any shots in the last few matches, but I think at the start of the season he was actually getting a fair few shots. No, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, for example, start of the season, three shots, 3 on target. Next game was 2 shots. Game after that was 4, and then 4, and then obviously the last few matches was 0, 1, 1. So, you know, sample size is important, but then I think just looking at 3 weeks at a time isn't exactly a great indication of anything. So my main thing is things will go up and down, and there's no need to completely overreact to a small sample size, especially when you've already got better data. Like a good comparison is this, right? Jackson had only 1 shot per game for the first 2 matches. Then he had 4, then he had 3, then he had 4, then he had 5, then he had 1, then he had 2. So it's not like Solanke is super far out compared to some of the top forwards who are scoring a lot of goals. So I don't know. Well, what is the point here? Have you just excluded the early season data for Solanke or what? Tough one. Start Rogers or Bowen. I'd probably start Bowen. I think it's not that tough, actually. I know it sells in goal. Amarildo, you said I ignore your super chat. Oh, sorry about that. So, what would I recommend? No, I think I did respond to this. No, didn't I? I said you go Jota out and you go Haaland out, and I said you go Salah and you choose one of the forwards that you want. So maybe if you want to go Isak for the long term or Jackson for the long term, you just do that. And then if we get some news later today on a defender, maybe you make a -4 for a defender, but you don't have to touch anything for the defender. So I didn't ignore the super chat. I just think it's a good time to make the Salah moves since you have 2 free transfers. Tobias says, you just transferred Ashley Young in. You think he's nice considering his assist ratio, nice fixtures up. But which 2 would you start? Ait Nouri, Ashley Young, or Saliba? I mean, I'd probably still start Saliba and Ait Nouri. But if you want to start like Ashley Young over Saliba, I think that's fine. I just probably wouldn't. Someone's just tweeted that Gabriel probably starts. Guessing you won't be taking a hit to bring in Trent. Nah, not at all. I think either one of Gabriel or Guardiola is going to play anyways. Why Salah captain over Palmer? Mostly a home game sort of element here. So, with the home game, I don't think Brighton and Bournemouth are too different in terms of qualities of teams when it comes to defense. But then it's just a case of, once again, I think that home and away is a very significant factor. Dream Brother 22, 150k rank at the moment. Bruno Fernandes in. Mate, congratulations. And lovely rank. I think it's actually a good time to own Bruno. You want me to make some leaks up? Nah, it's not happening. But yeah, lovely rank, lovely transfer as well for this game week. I feel a little bit. Apparently, Gabriel starts. Apparently, Gabriel starts. You think Johnson will start versus Ipswich? I think he will. For the most part, I can't see why he wouldn't. I'd start Rogers over Mikolenko. Who to start out of Gabriel, Mikolenko, Trent, Lewis? I'd start. What do you mean by who to start? You mean who to bench? Surely, unless you're planning to start only one defender. I'd probably bench Mikolenko in that situation. Just wondering if you would start Gabriel or Rogers. I'd probably still start Rogers, if I'm honest. Should quickly have a look at leaks, if we have any. Doesn't really seem like we have any, as far as I can see. Which is a shame, as usual. I don't know. I think it's all dried up today. This is always the case, though, because Arsenal have such tight-lipped news, and then we usually don't get leaks around Man City unless they're like the first game on the sheet. So I think it's not ideal. Surprising there's no Liverpool leak, so I guess no one's talked about, whether Robertson's bench, whether Diaz's bench, etc. So that's a bit of a shame. But we'll have to do with that. Watch Haaland go crazy. That's fine. That's FPL. I mean, I've owned Haaland for 4 weeks, and I've hoped that he's gone crazy for the last 2 weeks, and it just hasn't happened. Have a look at Discord. Okay, I'm on Discord now in the private chat. Okay, I've checked Discord for the private chat. McNeil's confirmed out. Is that true? McNeil is confirmed out. Who's confirming that he's out? I don't see where that's coming from. Unless that's... Am I missing a source? I can't say. Start Gabriel Murillo. I'd probably still start Gabriel. Does the cartel have any Sun news? No, but we saw Sun was in training today, so that's some additional news. Sun out. Okay, you guys are just waffling now. People just be saying stuff. You know, if you own all three, Salah, Haaland, Palmer, I'd captain Salah. Would you start Robinson or Faze? Brentford are conceding a lot. Maybe Robinson gets a piece of the pie. Yeah, I mean, I made this point earlier, but then it's still an away fixture, and Robinson has just been pretty ineffective from an attacking point of view in the most recent week. So, I mean, if it's versus like another player who's not super interesting, like Faze, I think Robinson is fine. Yeah, go for Robinson. Start Mikolenko, Gabriel. I'd probably go Gabriel still. If you had one more free transfer, would you get Trent in? I probably would consider it. The only thing that makes me go against going Trent this week is, okay, fine. That probably upgrades the Guardiola doubt, and I suddenly have a really strong defense of like Lewis plus Gabriel plus Trent. Only concern is I don't really have enough money to make some of the future moves I want, right? Because if I go from Trent now, I won't have enough money in the bank to go from something like Son to Saka. That's closed off for me. I wouldn't have the money in the bank to go from Solanke to Isak. That's also closed off for me. And the only way I could really do that is if I like reduce Calvert-Lewin to a 4.5, or if I reduce Calvert-Lewin to João Pedro, giving me some additional funds at least for some of the moves. So I probably would have still skirted away from the Trent move this week, to be honest. Even though it, like, for me, that's a luxury move, basically. I would have probably rolled that free transfer instead. Dibbling or Rodgers to start? I'd probably start Rodgers still in this situation. I feel like his minutes are a bit more guaranteed. Bench Lewis or Gabriel? I'd probably bench Gabriel. Would you consider Son / Palmer / Wood captaincy this game week? I'd probably consider Palmer, to be quite honest. If you've got McNeil starting, who should be on your bench? Mikolenko or Rodgers? I'd probably just go Rodgers. Start Aina ahead of Gabriel, if you really want to. I mean, I personally would still start Gabriel, but that's up to you. Any transfer suggestions for the squad with one free transfer? It's a Haaland squad. It actually has a pretty nice squad, to be honest. I would consider just... You've actually got Lewis, Gabriel, Mikolenko. I would actually roll in that situation because I probably wouldn't see this as an opportunity to necessarily, do the -4 to Salah. I'd probably just roll. Porro or Gabriel, I'd probably still start Porro just about. Start Guehi or Gabriel. I'd still probably start Gabriel. Would you consider Son / Palmer / Wood captaincy? Well, no. Not in my case. I would still captain Haaland or Salah over those players still in this game week. Rank Gabriel, Guardiola, Vandenberg. I mean, I'd say Guardiola, Gabriel, then Vandenberg in that order. Start Gabriel or Mikalenko. I'd go with Gabriel. Guardiola starting. I mean, I have no confirmation that Guardiola starts, but I personally just think that he either starts or he doesn't play. Is sort of my thoughts. It seems like we don't have any other leaks other than Gabriel. People are saying Gabriel starts, by the way. I can't say 100% whether the source is true, but if that helps your decision making, Gabriel starting, I think for most people who are asking the question about Gabriel, I would start Gabriel over everyone except for Guardiola this week. Or obviously Trent, someone like that. You know, there's not too many players in the game that I would actually bench Gabriel for. Leaf Davis is one of them this week. I think Nuri, I'd probably bench him for as well for this game week. But there's really not many other players other than those. So yeah, that's kind of how I would see it this week from a defender point of view. Like if we're just talking this game week, I think I prefer Porro, I prefer Lewis, I prefer Nuri. I think Aina is totally fair to go for this game week as well, just about. And that's really the extent of the list for me of players that I would play. Trent, of course, you know, doesn't even need to be mentioned. That's obvious. Guardiola only in the case that, as I said, if you read or interpret Guardiola's minutes to be start or doesn't play because of the knock, I think Guardiola's also a little bit clear of Gabriel as well. But those are my thoughts. I could be wrong as well on the Guardiola minutes. I think it's a bit risky there. So if you want just the safer option, more than likely Gabriel is going to play the full game, right? So even with that situation, I think it's a bit of a 50-50. Start Aitnuri or Rogers. I'd probably actually start Aitnuri in that case. Strand Larson, captain thoughts. You're trolling, not you're trolling. Those are the thoughts. Can you explain to me why none of the price changes are being applied to your team? Price changes are being applied to your team. It's just that you don't get price changes, like you don't get price rises for every 0.1. So if you actually go to the transfer page like here and you go to lists, you can see that this is the purchase price of a player. So the good example is Gabriel, right? This is the purchase price of a player. This is the selling price of a player. So how much you can sell it back to the market for. And this is his market price, the current price. You can only pocket and basically resell 0.1 of every 0.2 price rises. So for example, in Solanke's case, even though he is still 7.6, to me, he's worth 7.5. In Calvert-Lewin's case, I bought him at 5.9. So to me, he's 5.9 despite his current price being 6.0. Now, if these players rose again, then of course, the selling price would increase, but there's no 0.2 gap between the current price and the purchase price. Now, there's even some players where, of course, they've probably risen 4 times, right? So look at Rico Lewis. He's actually already risen 0.3. So if Rico Lewis goes to 4.9 in the game, then of course I will own him at 4.7 in the future. But that's pretty much how it works. Wood seems like he's fine. Cement, I'm no spam in the chat, so I'm just not going to answer that question if you're going to spam. McNeil, I think, might not play. I think there's a bit of doubt on there. Apparently Wood was seen with the squad today, so I think that's pretty fine for Wood. I think he's fine. Aitnuri, Mikalenko, I'd probably go Aitnuri. We got 10 minutes, captain, Haaland, Salah, Palmer. I'd probably still go Salah. Nick says -8 to get Eze out of Johnson or bench Rogers to play Gabriel. I would not take the -4. I just think it's just not worth it. Especially when you have players like Rogers and Gabriel on your bench. I would probably bench Gabriel to play Rogers, if I'm being honest, still. Guardiola starts. Who confirmed that? Who confirmed that? Are we being serious right now? Or are you just saying that? Now you want my attention. Mate, just for that, that's trolling. So I'm just going to have to put you in timeout. Flecken or Raya? I'd probably go Raya this game week, to be honest. Una troll, pretty much. Tony, leaks Guardiola out. Are you being serious or? Okay. This chat I cannot take seriously right now. Tony hasn't tweeted anything. So that's trolling as well, Duncan. Get in the bin for a minute. get in the bin for a minute. Mikolenko or Milenkovic? I'd go Milenkovic. Jones or Adama? Is that Curtis Jones? I'd probably go Adama. Start Rodgers or DCL? I'd still probably go DCL in this case. Have Salah and Haaland, who to captain? I'd probably honestly just go for Salah still. Palmer captain is okay. I still think it's worse than like Salah and Haaland, but that's that. Kyle Walker starts. I mean, Kyle Walker's not starting. Stop that. Wait, Kyle Walker is part of the squad. Okay. Part of the squad doesn't mean he starts, though. Part of the squad just means he's part of the squad. That is news, though. The thing is, though, Kyle Walker is so out of match shape. There's no way he is starting, in my opinion. I still think Walker is not starting. There's no way. I'm not worried, but, you know. Trent, Foden, Salah, TZD Twisted says, Trent to Foden, to Salah to Harwood for -4 to keep Haaland. I mean, if you want to keep Haaland, I think this makes sense. I really don't love taking Trent out because it probably thins your defense. And you've already got Haaland, to be quite honest. And Foden's going to play a good amount of minutes. I probably would veto the -4, if I'm honest. Like, and another question is, if you're going to captain Salah, maybe this move makes more sense. But if you're going to end up captaining Haaland anyways, then don't do the -4. So I hope that answers your question. I would say go back a little bit. Think about whether you actually want to keep Haaland as cap. If that's the case, don't do this move. If you want to remove Trent, really what defenders do you have to play for the next 3-4 game weeks that, I guess, necessitate moving Trent out for -4? If you feel like your defense can cover, fine. And you're going to Salah cap, make the move. Martin, thank you for the super chat. Start Gabriel or Murillo. I'd probably start Murillo, actually. You never know. I guess, obviously, there's a small chance that Gabriel could re-injured. I mean, because clearly he's playing very quickly after his knock. The clean sheet odds are very, very similar anyways. I'd probably actually consider playing Murillo, and it's very close. Also, the ownership is much better. Any Gabriel leaks? People are saying Gabriel starts. I would go Gabriel over Miklenko for sure. Chris Wood is available for Forest. Yeah, it seems like Chris Wood traveled. Walker traveled. I mean, I think Walker playing no matches of football for the last 2 weeks and then suddenly starting versus Bournemouth is super unlikely. I think Gabriel's starting, by the way, for most people. Walker traveled is an interesting one. I guess that doesn't really change too much for us, though. I just don't see how Pep gives Rico a break, to be honest. Maybe he gives him a break next week, but like Walker starting immediately after sort of having 0 match fitness is a bit of an odd one to me. Is Son starting? I can't guarantee that, but obviously my hope is that he does. Tony didn't leak. Start Brennan Johnson or Lewis. I'd start Brennan Johnson for sure. FPL 20 tweeted about Guardiola out. When did he do that? That's not the real FPL Tony. You've just been baited. I literally just went to FPL Tony's page and he's not posted anything about Guardiola out. So you're probably getting scammed by a fake account. But guys, you got to make your move soon. 3 minutes left. And Yogesh, I'm gonna have to remove that message because that's not true. Will Lewis start? I missed your super chat. Sorry about that, Ben Jardine. Let me have a look. So Martin's super chat, I did answer that. Ben's super chat was I know Lewis, Emmanuel Rogers bench 2. I'd probably play Lewis, to be honest, and I'd probably play Rogers in this case. The way I see it, I think Lewis is just a touch better than Aina, and of course, I still think that amongst, let's say, Semenyo, the ceiling's pretty low. You're kind of betting either Lewis or Semenyo, so I feel like I'd be tempted to bench one of the two. And in this case, I think probably why not go with Lewis. And then Rogers, I feel like his minutes could be really good after the rest, and still on paper a better game than what Semenyo has. So I'm just gonna play Rogers. I would play Rogers in that situation. If you want, I guess the maximum sort of differential for your team, it's obviously gonna go in the direction of Aina and Rogers. But you can make that decision as well yourself. I would personally be tempted to play Lewis. John Wick says, hi Fran, thoughts on Haaland to Jackson and B, Johnson to Salah C, or leave it end of the week? If it's for a free transfer, I think that's fine, John Wick. If it's not, and you're taking hits for it, I think it's not really worth it. Gabriel starts, that's true. Guardiola starts. We don't have a leak for Guardiola starts, by the way, so yeah, there's been no leaks around Guardiola, but I'm just gonna play him anyways. It seems like Gabriel starts, so yeah, that is the news. Trent and Cunha in for Guardiola and Solanke -8. I don't think that's worth a -8. Start Madison or Mavididi. I'd probably go Mavididi. Use on McNeil. I'm not sure. Lewis a bad transfer in. I don't think he's a bad transfer in, but obviously the City fixtures aren't exactly as great. So yeah, Tony benches a Flecken, but that's because Tony has Fabianski and Fabianski plays football. That's pretty much it. Yeah, Gabriel is pretty much confirmed to start by a lot of sources. What's the hype on Cunha? I don't understand why is DCL and Cunha the same player? Like, what is the argument there? Haaland had great fixtures and he blanked. Are you going to use that as an argument to not go for Haaland in the future? So yeah. Yeah, I know it was Buna. Long live the cartel. All right, good luck, everyone. I think that should really be the game week. Yeah, I mean, Gabriel is going to be a bit regrettable, but maybe, hopefully, I don't know, Guardiola misses out entirely or something like that, and I can manage around that. But otherwise, I guess I'll be a complete neutral in that Newcastle vs Arsenal game. Maybe a bit of a Newcastle fan, potentially, since I don't own many Arsenal players. But otherwise, take care. Goodbye. LTFPL, Andy and Harry sold Haaland. When did they do that? Like 2 minutes ago. Haaland is not injured. People just think that this is a good run of games where they're going to be captaining Salah for the next few. So that's sort of why we've done that. Anyways, guys, take care. Hope you guys have a lovely game week. I'm probably going to bounce. Start Anthony Taylor, Michael Oliver. Honestly, don't make me do that. All right. Take care. LTFPL almost missed saving. Okay. But he did it, right? Fair play. All right, take care, guys. Have a good game week, and I'll see you guys soon.